Good evening, sir.
Mr. Pacey, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm
I
very
was,
well.
I was a
Look
bit
at
worried.
that hair. I'm
Oh, mate,
so jealous. Look at
this
the.
is this is the Corona cut slash the Jedward.
Likewise, absolute microphone head. The
I've
first thing you
tried
do when you go on here is just realise, oh no, look how bad my hair
looking
looks.
terrible. I know I've tried to do some other things with it, but when
Yeah,
you commit to a cut, it's like this. Sometimes you've
yeah.
got no other option, so it's going. It's just going to
Just
go.
roll with it.
Could be
What do you think?
terrible, but
Nice. Where are you here? Office? Home office?
home office, yeah, a little
Yeah,
tour slash playroom, so it doubles up.
yeah.
But have you seen this?
So
How
you
good is
look
that?
out. Who did that?
Our fourth birthday, some of our awesome community, we had a bit of a get together and they got it printed for us, got it made for us, a caricature. So just flipping brilliant.
Nice, right.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah,
Good. I didn't know if you
staying.
were gonna get suited and booted for this conversation. Well, I needed to get dressed up, but I didn't.
Nah, it's yeah, light-hearted. I've seen a few actually. I watched a YouTube live last night just with some football guys, just interviewing other ex-football
Yeah,
guys, and they were all in suit and ties. It was class. And then
yeah.
one of them got up to get a beer because they were drinking all the way through. One of them got up to get a beer and he had his like pajama shorts on, checked pajama shorts
Loving
on with
it.
a suit and tie. Absolutely class. Not really my style, but each their own.
No, keep it casual. Keep it
Yeah,
casual.
absolutely.
I'm just gonna
If
put a
there's
tag
anything,
on.
oh, go on, mate.
No, it's right. Go on. You're right. I'm just gonna put a
I'll,
message in so I can try and tag it.
I was going to say, if there's anything that is positive that's come out of this, is that everyone's doing bodyweight training.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah,
people are sort of all of a sudden found themselves in a situation where they don't have a huge amount of choice.
yeah,
But yeah, no, we're hoping that from our perspective that people get to experience the benefits of it. And
hmm
I think there's always been that sort of misconception potentially that bodyweight training is for beginners, and that's what you do. You got to do a push up before you can do a bench press, and then once you can do a bench press, just crack on.
yeah,
Um, but if you understand how to manipulate your own body weight, then there's plenty of legs in it for people to get stuck into. So yeah, hopefully it's causing people to think a little bit different about training. And we actually had Andrew Tracy. I don't know if you know Andrew, men's health fitness editor and
I
just all round
saw, yeah,
machine.
yeah, yeah,
We had him on the podcast yesterday, and his kind of methodology around training is sort of strip back to the basics, first principles, and like what do you actually need to be able to do, and what do you actually need access to equipment wise. And it was just really interesting because when you're forced into it, like you actually can become quite resourceful, and you can realize that what do I need 90 minutes in the gym to get a
yeah,
workout if you actually commit to it and stop just dilly dallying about. So
yeah. I think that
yeah,
the moral of the whole story is that do we actually need to do and go to the lengths and have the, I suppose, luxuries that we had before? Is that actually needed on so many different
yeah,
levels? Whether that be training, whether that be, I don't know,
yeah,
luxuries like going out for food. Like how many times do we go out for food? Do we really need to go out 3 times a week for
yeah,
food?
yeah.
It's
People
actually quite
realize how
nice to
much
be
they
at home.
spend. Yeah, when they
Oh,
don't have to
mate.
go out for coffee and stuff. Like people are
Yeah,
saving loads of money if they're
yeah,
fortunate enough to be continue getting paid during this time,
of
obviously.
course, of course.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting time and great time for people to learn a little bit of like handstand skills or just something to focus on as well. You know, just a
Yeah,
bit of a positive thing to do when you because people will be missing like lifting barbells.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely going to. I'm hopeful that it resets in a lot of different areas, and one of those ways in that how people look at fitness. And it's not because I have a body weight training business. It's genuinely because I think there are benefits of not being reliant on being able to go to a gym with a fully equipped weight section. That you actually have a little bit more context of how you can just train anywhere. I mean, I travel with a set of gymnastics rings when we go. My wife is South African. When we travel there, a set of rings, the nice set of wooden rings will cost you 30 quid. And if you can hook them around a tree, I guarantee that you can probably do as effective upper body weights or upper body based session than any that will rival any kind of weighted session for
hmm
general kind of adaptation and preparation. Obviously, if you want to go and be a bench press champion, then you're going to need a bench press. But if you just want an athletic and functional, stable system, which looks pretty decent as well, like a set of gymnastics rooms, it's got to be the cheapest way to access that for sure.
I think it's so. Again, just to try to generalize, the more areas of your life where you're not dependent on one thing.
Yeah,
So, for instance, we've got I know this is maybe a bit of a silly example, but we've got hens, so we get eggs every day. I'm going to the butcher around the corner and everyone's complaining there's no eggs. This was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, I'm stacked out. This is class. Like breakfast sorted every single day. Like,
you've got another business going.
Exactly. A little side hustle and a side hustle. But then, like, if you're reliant on the gym and you've got nothing else, and that shuts down, or this happens, not that anyone was predicting this to ever happen, but you become reliant on that same thing, and that obviously feeds into today's chat of being reliant on one income. Yeah. And I was under the impression, like a lot of people, you're employed. Employment equals safety. Self-employment equals risky. And then, like, I've never been so busy in this time. Not saying that every self-employed person is going to be the same, but I know I've been stacked out with stuff to do, and there's a lot of people who thought they were safe and secure, maybe finding out that it's maybe not like that.
Yeah, that's been our experience as well over the years, of people sort of think you're a risk taker because you've started your own business, and it comes with a certain amount of, there's difficulties along the way which we can get into, but we often hear stories of friends and people that we know just being made redundant, and all of a sudden, and the problem with that is, and one of the beautiful things about self-employment is it goes back to your point about what you actually need, because it's very rare that people are going to start a business and they're going to start making 40 grand a year and they're going to have a great opportunity to build a lifestyle around it. So you don't buy a big house and you don't take expensive car payments. And you actually, like, mine and my wife's expenses, like, because of what we've been through for the last 12 years, it's pretty minimal. So we don't need to earn a lot of money to maintain our lifestyle because we've kept it simple. And I really like and value that flexibility, that my general base level of existence is built around actually having a pretty modest income stream, because I then don't become reliant on, if I lose a 40 or 50 grand a year job and I've got a massive mortgage and all these overheads every month, where does that leave me from a stress and perspective of having to go and find another 50 or 60 grand a year job? Oh,
go on, mate. Sorry, I interrupted then.
No, go.
I was going to say, has your mindset always been like that? Or has that manifested itself because of your self-employment and you're obviously reliant on other people involved in the business as well, but you're bringing the cash in, you're not reliant on an employer?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you really get to experience it until you've been self-employed for a period of time, because you don't know the hardships of it. Like, it goes right back to the beginning when you're sort of coaching and getting paid by the hour as a private strength and conditioning coach. You kind of work out how many hours you can do and you can sell, and you can work out that you quickly understand then how much you can sell that time for. And in sports performance, there's a limit on that. You don't get to scale it like you might do if you're working in corporate, because the budgets are capped. And there's a lot of free support available from other people like EIS, if athletes are on funded programs and that sort of stuff. And the challenge is then, if you're not on a funded program, if you're a podium potential or something, then you just don't have a lot of cash. So you're not going to be doing a lot of sessions. So there's a lot of like intricacies in that. But when you kind of hit that threshold of going, I'm working my backside off, and this is how much money I can earn, you have no choice but to build your lifestyle around that until you start to then diversify your businesses to try and make a slightly different business model. So I don't think, as I said, I've never really been materialistic. I'm not bothered about accumulating stuff. But it's something that we've just lived, and you realize, like you said before, just not having a lot of disposable income during the periods of time when you're growing a business, you don't have the choices where you want to then go and buy expensive stuff because you haven't got the resource, you haven't got the cash. So it just kind of fosters it, and then over time you kind of rue it for a bit, and you're like, oh, it'd be nice to have a bigger house or a nice car or whatever. But then you kind of you go through that period long enough, and you come out of it and you go, do you know what? Like, I don't really want that stuff. Because you're flexible, right? Like, we could, if we wanted to, start a new business tomorrow, or my wife is South African, so we could move to South Africa, or an opportunity comes up and you could go and do something else, because we're not wrapped up in the complexity of stuff. We're unfortunate. My wife is also self-employed, so I mean, if it's hard enough for one person in the house being self-employed, put two in, and then it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I mean, when I put that tweet out, I think it was the tweet rather than the Instagram post about the things that I'd learned. You'd mentioned that you'd started a couple of businesses.
Yeah,
is that right? I didn't know that. I obviously know you was School of Calisthenics, and you've been doing that for ages, and thought that was maybe the first foray into starting a business. But what other businesses have you set up in the past?
Yeah, so one thing I was going to say before we get into the depths of the conversation was that. like I was going to sat reflecting about what we were going to talk about and some of the messages we want to
Mm.
put across. And one of the big things that I'm always kind of like, when I see stuff on social and business kind of like mentors and business advice, I'm always wary and conscious that like it's a perspective. Like that person has started
Yes.
multiple businesses, for example, but that's their context. So I've got experience of starting businesses, some that have worked, some that haven't. One we're trying to scale, but that's all within the realms of what my context and experience is, and that's my like that's the realm that I can talk from. So I don't want to say anything that we're going to talk about. It could actually be like different for somebody else. Somebody else might have one business and it just goes boom from day one.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
might not have the struggle and stuff, but there'll always be problems. But yeah, but I thought that was just a useful point just to throw in. But it started off, so when I finished I did an internship. Let's talk from a strength and conditioning perspective. I did an internship and then got offered a job off the back of it. I say job, it was a contracted role, so it was secured work with Sport 981. So I was leading the S&C support at Nottingham Trent University. So I was self-employed I set up a business, and the original business name was Kinetic 360. The idea being like a 360 approach to movement. And I was contracting out to them. So there was a certain amount of guaranteed work there for a period of time, which was great, which kind of helped me to get that transition in. Paid by the hour at contractor rates in those days, which, yep, you've said about contractor rates.
Yeah.
Contractor rates, yeah. So, and then I was picking up some athletes on the side and starting to build that sort of stuff as well. So you're just trying to, like, you've got this amount of time in a week that you want to work for, and you're just trying to find stuff which you can plug into it. And I remember the early days of just being super excited when somebody wanted to pay me like 20 quid an hour to do some work. And I still remember, like, I've always wanted to own my own business, always wanted to be self-employed from when I was a kid. And I remember the first time I'd set up my own business, I got a business account and I got all this stuff going on, and I was so proud of myself. And I remember taking a check with the first payment to the bank, like it's like for 50 quid. And I slid it across the counter to the lady, and I was like, put that in my business account.
Yeah.
I was like absolutely buzzing, because I'm now Mr. King Dingaling, like got my own
Yeah.
business. And then it soon realized that it is flipping brutally difficult to make money, like when you're competing against the market that is health and fitness. So Kinetic 360 ran for a period of time. I was doing some contracts, picked up quite a bit of work in Paralympic sport through that. And then off the back of 2012, myself and a physiotherapist, a friend of mine, Gemma Jefferson, and who now works for British Athletics, Richard Whitehead, who was one of the athletes that I trained, decided that we wanted to look at building together, like, how close could we get to a properly individualized, specific sports performance or athlete-centered support team. So I led the S&C, Gemma was physio, and Rich was doing sort of athlete mentoring and mindset. We kind of like built a bit of nutrition and mindset psychology stuff into that as well. So we got that up and running. The idea was specifically to support Paralympic athletes. And the idea was a real purist approach. That's what we wanted to do, was get as close to that real kind of athlete centered, because a lot of sports, and it's probably still the case now, at the time, were claiming to be an athlete centered approach, but it wasn't, because the size of the engine was just huge, or the organization was huge. So that ran until last year. We closed it down because it just evolved and people moved on to different roles, and things just changed. But it was an interesting one, because right at the start, we've had this like visioning period. And I remember saying, like, oh, wouldn't it be like, it seems so far away, so impossible, that we would potentially go up against EIS and get a contract, that we would actually be able to compete at that level to get national governing bodies. And it felt like a far off dream at that point. But start of 2016, we got a phone call from British Para Swimming, and we took on the lead role for their S&C support. And they chose to do that rather than going and getting support from the EIS, which was a huge thing for us. And that's still, then we decided to dissolve that business just because things had changed, the landscape had changed. When we set it up, there wasn't a great specialism in Paralympic sport, but over the last cycle from London through to Rio, that's changed quite a bit, and the land is now much more support for people, for Paralympic athletes. Along the same time as that, we ran, my wife bought a business called Swim Skills, which was like running sort of 3-day training camps for young competitive swimmers, and we led the S&C on that. So we kind of managed that. It was her and a business partner, and I was kind of involved in that one. And that one we sold 2 years ago, I think it was, just to move on to something new. And then School of Calisthenics, as well as that. In terms of that started, we registered that 2016. So it's been a bit of an evolution of just kind of finding your way through. And I think that's probably one of the things about being self-employed in sports, performance, health, fitness, whatever kind of area it is that the path is like, you don't know, like what you think you're going to be doing in 6 months' time is maybe completely different to what you're actually going to be
100%,
doing.
100%.
And is that your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's things I'm doing now and have come across my desk, so to speak, just because people do know I'm in this area. Not necessarily that I'm the best that they could possibly get, but because I've maybe got the flexibility and it's
Yeah.
not a full-time job, it's a couple of hours a week, it's a day, just random stuff that has been absolutely incredible that I've been involved in, and people who've, you know, given me a ring to try to help, and it's been great. And like I say, I don't kind of pat myself on the back for that, but because the situation I've created, having been self-employed, it's I still got you, mate. Oh, yeah, I got you. But it's obviously I've been identified as someone who may be able to help and be flexible. And there's a gym in France that I'm involved in, a performance facility over there, which is through one of our mutual friends, Pete McKnight. All these kind of things that a year ago, well, probably 2 years ago when I started, were just like I had this one track that I was going down, and then little things come off, and you think, "No, that sounds cool. I'll do that." And then all of a sudden, you're down this track that you never thought you'd be down, thinking, "This is unbelievable." Like sack the other stuff. That's well boring. That's way more boring. So, yeah, it's been an interesting road, absolutely. I think, but have been able to accept that, I think, is a big thing, to not be stuck on that track. And even the guys that maybe the S&C coach, I'm going to be an S&C coach. I'm going to be an intern. I'm going to be an assistant in academy. I'm going to be head of academy. I'm going to be an assistant first team, and I'm going to be head first team S&C. Boom, that's my track. And any little thing, and this is definitely from experience, any little thing that comes off to the side and maybe isn't on that track is like, no, nothing to do with me. This is my track.
Yeah.
Where actually, if you go, oh, that's quite interesting. I wonder what that's about. All of a sudden, you're getting into this big new world, looking left and looking right, and some really exciting stuff can happen. But I think certainly I was, and I'm guessing other people are as well, stuck on that one track, thinking that's going to be my route to the top type of thing, the traditional route, when very few people will follow that and go all the way through.
Yeah, I think a part of that is like taking that entrepreneurial mindset of like the landscape changes all the time and context changes as you learn and evolve and become a specialist, or you become more interested in more areas. Like to say if you said to me when like day one of my S&C career, where do you want to get to? It would never have been, I would never have thought that would be where I was now. But it's just as you start to weave through, you start to go, do you know, there's an opportunity there. And this is probably the difference between, like when you're self-employed, there is no structure. You haven't got a progressive route because it doesn't exist. You've got to create it for yourself, which is probably one of the hardest things to do because there's so much uncertainty about what direction you're going to go in. There isn't a clear next step. You don't go, well, what if I get a promotion? I'm going to get to do X, Y, and Z. So I think that's one of the biggest uncertainties. And to your point about the different opportunities that come up, when people speak to me about starting businesses or going self-employed, they're always quite a bit unsure because they can't see how they're going to make it work. But the biggest thing that I've seen from myself and then a number of other people that I know that have started their own businesses is people don't know you're available until you're available. So they might think that you're in a job and you've got a few hours a week, but I won't bother you because he's busy, he's got a job. Whereas as soon as you make yourself available, all of a sudden you'll find opportunities start to come in. Not you don't have to go and look for them, but there's probably, in my experience, there's more work than you think there is. It's just not always the work that you want to do. And someone said something to me like a long time ago, and it was in context. I came back from being a scuba diving instructor, and I came back and I went to a HR business, a recruitment agency. And I walked in there, basically the lady said that I was unemployable for an admin job because I'd been a beach bum for 3 years. It's like, sure, I can't find you a job. And a guy said to me, I was kind of a bit bummed out about it and a bit disappointed. And you take that pretty hard because I've been like assistant manager of a dive centre and stuff. Like I've done some decent work. I mean, I was a beach bum, but still, we don't want people to tell that. Yeah. And he said to me, like, you've got to do what you've got to do until you don't have to do it anymore. And I've always carried that because there's some periods of time in self-employment where you've got to do what you've got to do because you've got this bigger goal and there comes some stuff which is going to help you to get there. But it is a long, if you want self-employed and you want to coach international athletes as an S&C, the chances are you're going to have to take some PT work along the way because there's no way of getting enough work in the early days to actually pay enough to give you maybe, unless you're happy earning like a minimal amount of money, but you're going to end up doing some work with people that is not your ideal clientele, but it keeps you in the game, so you can actually then start to explore the areas that you want to kind of progress towards. And I think that's a big part for it, of self-employment for me, is there's a certain amount of survival in it, of like, you just got to keep your head above water a lot of the time.
How difficult did you find that at the start? I'm guessing, I don't think for me it was I think it was a bit of a kick to the ego to be able to have to do things that you necessarily don't want to do. But I think it's just accepting that you are it's on the path. It might not be the exact path, but you're moving forward. And like you say, a lot of the time it's just keeping your head above water. And I think as long as you've got that not the end goal, because I don't have an end goal. I'm just navigating through as best as I can. And I think that's maybe what I was expecting. Okay, I've got this end goal, and I'm just going to go from here to there. Like, easy. But then obviously
it's GB tracksuit, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think, like you say, self-employment is accepting that it's not going to be like that. You're going to have to do things potentially you don't want to do, just to keep going, to keep you in the game for tomorrow, for next week, for next month, when the thing actually that you want to do does come up. But that takes quite a reflect on it. That takes a certain type of person to accept that and not get really frustrated and not on the traditional path that they thought they would be.
Yeah, I think for me, like personally, I without wanting to sound cliche, but I loved the game of being self-employed more than I valued what a potential fast track might. And I'm a stubborn person, so like being employed. Once you've been self-employed, you almost someone says, I think Daniel Priestley actually said this, whose work I can recommend. There's a couple of books and reference if people are interested, but he says that like once you've been self-employed, you effectively become unemployable because you've had a taste of what it's like to be your own boss. So I don't really want to go into a role now being self-employed for 12 years where somebody tells me I can have 25 days a year holiday, and in reality I might take less than that, or these are things I have to be there at 9 and finish at 5. And the reality is that some years I've taken less holiday, some years I've taken more. I work way more than what I would have to have done in an employed role as a self-employed person. So it's not even that I'm fussy about like, I don't want to work 37.5 hours a week. I probably work 60 hours a week, but I do it on my terms. And I think that's a big thing of, I just wanted to stay self-employed. That's been the goal. I never really looked at an EIS gig and thought, you know what, that's really where I want to be. As great as that is, and the career path is amazing, the support is amazing, you get pensions and paid holidays. And if I go away for 2 weeks in the summer, previously I wouldn't get paid. I don't make any money for 2 weeks. But I think it's that point of, I kind of did what I needed to do to stay alive and while I was chipping away, because I knew where I wanted to kind of the sort of stuff I wanted to do. And I also realized how bad I am at some stuff. Like I took personal training clients and I would never wanted to get into PT. I always wanted to go and work in sport. That's my passion. And I realized that I'm just not a good personal trainer because I just treated them like athletes and they're not. I gave them really structured training programs and they would come in and be like, can we just do something different? I mean, like, what do you mean different? We're doing the plan. Like, the time frame is different. Like, what do you mean you ate a box of fudge last night? Like, what do you... I tell people that now, they're like, oh, like personal training, blah, blah, blah. I'm an awful personal trainer. I'm like, I don't know if I'm half decent strength and conditioning coach, but I did stuff to stay self-employed. And if I put 12 years into an organization, like a professional club or a big governing body, like what role could I have been doing now 12 years on? I don't know. But I wouldn't swap it. And that's the thing. Like I've looked at it and it gets hard, and you go, do you know what? Sometimes would I be better off in an organisation? And there are some incredible jobs out there, and no doubt jobs that I would enjoy doing. But I don't know whether it's stubbornness or stupidity, and it's just or blind optimism. It's maybe a combination of like all three that it just keeps you going. But it's addictive. It's super addictive.
Yeah. No, I've thought about that in terms of almost being unemployable. Because you do get into the mindset, and there's a question that's popped up there that we'll get to in a sec. Becoming unemployable because you have got used to being your own boss. But the thing that you mentioned there about the holidays, that's what did me. That was the point where I did the quick sums of if I retire at 60, which unlikely. If I retire at 60, I'm 29 now. How many days holiday? Obviously, there's weekends, but it was more the principle of someone saying, "Rob, you can have today off. Thank you. You can have today off. You're allowed that now." Obviously, everyone's allowed weekends in a regular job.
Yeah.
To doing them sums and going, I've got 600 days, and that's me. I'm retired.
Yeah, you're
thinking,
done.
oh my God, this is brutal. And then I had a little bit of a panic because I thought, how can I get out of this? Not like, ironically, I've taken less holiday through the last 2 years than I ever have done, but that's because I want to. That's because I've made that decision to go that way. Whereas someone going, boom, 20 days holiday, sign there, and you're like falling over yourself to do it. So that was a big turning point for me.
Yeah, I think as well, like when I was sort of starting out, the salaries in employed S&C work were not that attractive. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know what they are now because I'm not in the job market. But at the time, I think an EIS S&C like level 2 is that your starting point, level 2?
I don't know I don't know the levels at AS. Yeah.
But it was about 22 grand a year. And to get the interview, they wanted 3 to 5 years worth of experience with elite athletes. And that's probably one of the difficult things with S&C is that there are some people that probably do better than others. But what's expected for the level of experience and then how that turns into remuneration is probably drastically out of balance. It's probably fair to say. Mm-hmm. But flip that around and go, well, say you can get yourself to earn 35 grand a year or 40 grand a year as an S&C coach. To earn 40 grand a year self-employed, like you're gonna have to have a decent business. Like that's not going to happen from day one. No one's going to walk into 40 grand a year unless they take an investment, and that's going to come with its own issues. And you'd argue if someone takes an investment, like you're doing a startup, why are you paying 40 grand a year?
Yeah.
And I think
more like four.
Yeah.
More like 4 grand a year in that situation, yeah.
Yeah, and just to put that into context, like the first like professional athlete that I trained was a guy called Richard Whitehead, double leg amputee sprinter. I trained him for free for 2 years to get experience, to get into a professional sports like context, and to give him that. So like 2 sessions a week, sometimes 3, trips away every now and again. I didn't get paid for. We didn't pay ourselves anything out of School of Calisthenics for the first 2 years. So all that work that we did to build that business, we didn't take any money out. We put it all back in, just to continue to scale it. And that was to the point that I made on the tweet that I replied to you on, was around starting a business and having a second income stream which you can leverage. Because I was working as an S&C coach, I got a good contract with British Para Swim, one that I'm still doing and still enjoy doing. But that was enough money to keep my head above water, to survive, whilst I shifted some attention over to try and build this other thing that I didn't need to pull cash out of, which meant it's growing faster. Because Jacko and I were going out for weekends doing coaching courses or coaching workshops, and we'd probably take mileage, that might be it, and we're doing decent money off those days. So it's just a different way of constantly sort of like, you find yourself getting a little bit of headway, and then you might take a little bit of a cut to try and go somewhere else, and you're kind of like leveraging these little components all the time just to try and make a landscape that works. And I say we're 12 years in, and it's a long way from being comfortable.
I think now's probably a decent time to dive into that question. I think we might have.
Yeah, it was about being tempted back to employment.
Yeah,
safety in inverted commas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even that inverted commas even definitely applies now, as people are realizing that's maybe not the case. But yeah, I had a bit of a meltdown probably about 12 to 18 months ago, and put the feelers out to maybe get back into some full-time employment, and that was for various different reasons, but I'm so glad that didn't. But again, I handed my notice in at my previous full-time job 2 weeks before the month was up, the period of time that I had to serve was up. And again, meltdown. What am I doing? This is this is gonna break me. And spoke to a guy that does my website actually, and he's self-employed. And he's like, well, if your employer wants to let you go, what happens? And I said, well, they have to give me 4 weeks notice, right? So if you sign a contract to do some consultancy work, just write 4 weeks in. Then it's no
Yeah.
different. It's absolutely zero difference. There's no one's not more safe than the other than the other.
Mm.
It's no different at all, and that's definitely been the case in the last 2 years. And yeah, the little wobble was definitely a little wobble. I think I'd have made a big mistake if I had have gone down that route. But my inspiration came from my dad, and growing up with
Mm.
a dad that was self-employed, and he was the only, like, when I was 12 at high school doing hurdles at whatever stadium for the school, like, he was the only parent there because everyone else was at
Yeah.
work. Well, he didn't want bothered, or was at work, and he was
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
watching. He just worked till 10, 11 at night to make up that time. And we don't have any kids
Mm.
currently, but I thought, if that's the way we're going to go, I want that. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
anything else. I want to take my kid to school. I want to pick him up, and I want to be there when he plays footy or swims or whatever. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah, we're in the same sort of situation now with both of us being self-employed. We have Jack, my 3-year-old, and we've got options around his what we do with him and when we do it and when we work. And that's probably what's one of the things that's beneficial. Like, because Karen, her dad is an architect, a very successful architect in South Africa. So she's seen self-employed life like from she grew up with it. She knows what it takes to build a business. So she's extremely understanding, and is now also works in the same way of. When 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock when Jack's in bed, that's now sort of feasible work time. And I think that's probably one of the things which would be difficult is if you've got one person who is in a full-time employed job and one person trying to build a business, having that relationship where you understand what the other person is trying to do and going through. Because when the clock goes at 5, it's not necessarily off time when you're self-employed.
We'll come back to that, Tim, as well.
Yeah. What was your experiences of like burnout as a self-employed person? Because I've definitely kind of like got very close on a few occasions of just being in a pretty horrible state.
Yeah, a couple of times. One was the wobble when I was putting the feelers out to get back in. One particular time, I didn't really know that's what I was going through, but my wife had clearly clocked it and had booked a weekend away, just a night away up in North Yorkshire. And I was panicking, and I think it was on a Sunday night, which meant I couldn't work on the Monday, which was like equal panic for me. Alarm bells are ringing. I can't work Monday. Panic. And she was like, no, it'd be fine. So I just got everything in order. And it was probably about 9 months ago. And it was the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Because we went away. I realized the world didn't end because I couldn't work on Monday. And that's been a big thing for me, to be able to just do it once. And then it was, okay, the world didn't end. I can handle it. Everyone's okay. No one's gonna die, and everything carries on. We've done it a couple of times since, and I think it's just she recognised that then, but I've become better at recognising that now and going, I've got to go. I'm going out. Or I'm not going to work tomorrow, or just down tools for a day or two. Things are going to be all right. I just need to get away, and I think that's probably where I've got a little bit better. Is just that self-awareness.
Yeah, because it's pretty tough. It's quite a lonely time, I've found. Yeah, a couple of times of just in the early days of just like, I'm kind of an all or nothing sort of person. So if I go in for something, I'm like all in, and that to my detriment sometimes, in where I'll just work myself to the bone. So there was a time when I was doing university sport where I would do, like, pre-season was busy, and I would do like 47 hours or 40 hours a week for 3 weeks of stand-up delivery by myself, pretty much, just team after team after team. And then we're doing like coach education workshops at the weekend. And there was a period of time where I think I'd maybe gone like, I don't know, maybe 40 odd days without a day off. Because I fell into a stupid mindset, and it's kind of ridiculous now when you think about it. But as a young coach just trying to make waves in a competitive industry, like, I just went at it. And I just kind of felt like, being a self-employed person, if my business is growing, a good sign of a successful business is revenue, how much cash you're making at the end of the year. But what I've not really appreciated was when you are selling time for money, how difficult that is to do, because you just spend more time, which means that you just push yourself harder. And I just burnt the candle at both ends. And when I hit that point, I can be in a fairly sort of like, I'm an external processor at the best of times. And and I'll just get like, it just hits me, and then I'm probably just take quite drastic action, I guess, in terms of I'll confront the issue, or I'll just kind of like, I get in a bit of a funk, and then it's just taking some time to work yourself out of that. And I think one thing that I'm also conscious of is like, people always say, oh, self-employed, like, it must be difficult, like, you must work hard. And, you know, everyone works hard. You know, if you're in a football club, which I've never been, you've probably got more experience about this than I have. But everyone works hard. Like, it's just, I think the difference is the pressures that you're under are different, because if you don't work hard, I don't know where my salary is going to come from at the end of the month. I do now, we've got a little bit more consistency, but in the early days, you didn't know how much was I going to make a grand next month or 500 quid. And there's days when you sat there in a day of the week and you went like, me and Jack have had these honest conversations where I went, I earned 30 quid today. Like, that's it, isn't it? Like 30 quid, I did one session. And it's, and you just, it takes a lot of faith, I think, to keep in the game and to keep moving forwards. It's not an easy thing, but if you can make it work, and that's a positive around it, like it's, you can make a really good life for yourself. But I guess my point I was wanting to make is that if you're in an employed role, you can still burn out. Like, it's just, you can get pushed so hard by the organisation and your own desire to go above and beyond. And you see it all the time that people are hugely invested in their jobs. They push themselves to it, and the employer is not even driving them that hard. They're doing it to themselves. And we all do that to a point. And I think it's 12 years in, and this is a fairly good example now. There's so much work that we could do at the moment. Like, we're fortunate to have the opportunity with online business to really kind of double down and go after it. But I can't, because I've got a 3-year-old at home and my wife's self-employed. So we're both now trying to, there's more work than we probably ever had that we could do. And I've got half as much time to do it in, because I'm looking after Jack for 2.5 days a week. So I've just had to go, you know, I can't do it. Like, I can't do that at the moment. And just release yourself from the pressure of trying to do everything all the time.
So have you done anything with the business to try to allow the business to take on that work, but not necessarily have you do it?
Yeah, and that's where that's one of the challenges of scaling a business, is that it comes down to resource. So have you got the revenue stream to be able to pay somebody else to do it? Like, we're a small team at School of Calisthenics. So there's 4 of us working on the business, plus a couple of extra sort of contractors that help us with media and website and that sort of stuff. But you're at that point where you're going, well, I could spend more and outsource and pay off my time. And some people would say within that you should do that, because it's of more value for me to be working on the business than doing some other stuff which somebody else could potentially do. But it's not as simple as that, because you come down to a cash flow game, and you're like, I need to make sure that I've got the revenue or the funding to be able to pay that person to do it. And then also, so just because I get X amount of hours back a month doesn't mean that money is going to end up in the business next month ready to pay that person. So it's just a complexity, I think, of trying to balance that out. And hopefully we'll get to a point, but I think that's the reality of being in a startup, is that you have to be a jack of all trades. So a lot of the branding that gets done is me. A lot of the product design on the website and our virtual classroom is me doing. I'm changing fonts and colours and that sort of stuff. And it's like, it's not my specialist area, but it needs doing. And it's part of what comes with the territory, I think. But yeah, hopefully at some point we'll have the resource to be able to kind of just go, right, somebody's going to look after that, so it means that I can do something else. But it's that patience, again, of scaling it up all the time, staying in the game for long enough until you can kind of get over the point to then go and get some more help.
Have you found it difficult that you and Jacko are the faces of School of Calisthenics? Therefore, it becomes a little bit more difficult to have another face, not necessarily to take your place, but maybe on a temporary basis to allow you to do X, Y, or Z in the business, because I know you've got other coaches now as well.
Yeah.
But just taking you away from it, did you have the fear of someone turning up to a workshop, for instance, and going, "Where's Tim?" Like,
yeah.
this is School of Calisthenics is Tim, isn't it? And then there's obviously someone else there, and you're like, "What's going on?"
Yeah,
was that fear there?
Yeah, we've started growing the coaching team, and we're very aware that we have created a business as the Jack and I we are the faces of it. But that's part of it's almost it's unavoidable, because it's it's how it started, and that's how we created it. I think one of the things that we've done is we've got really good coaches that are supporting us that all bring something different to the table, actually bring something that Jack and I can't bring. So they've got a different skill set. And I've always been, when working with the guys that we're working with now, and even coaches in the past, is like, don't try and be a mini me. Like, don't try and just do what I do. Like, you've got to bring your own personality to this because you've got experiences and skills that I haven't got. So we've kind of like, there have been times this year and last year when it would be me and another coach, or Jacko and another coach, that would go and do a workshop. So people would get experience of one of us, but they wouldn't necessarily see both him and I together.
Yeah.
Starting to put the guys out a little bit more through onto the social channels, so people are slowly getting opportunity to understand that there are other people in the business that they're going to have contact with, and because we've got good people, I don't think that we've never had any complaints where someone's gone, "Crikey, I really wanted to see Tim." Which, like,
what's Jacko doing here? I wanted Tim.
He's my favourite. I don't know if I should be offended by that or not, but I'm not. He's great. Like, we can put somebody else in there and they can still have a great experience. And that's going to be the key to us scaling the business. Let go of how we want to do it and it being us. But yeah, no, it's a challenge for sure.
How have you found taking contractors on to do different things in the business? Has that been a challenge? Have you kind of gone through quite a few to get the guys that you want, or has that been you've kind of dropped on reasonably well?
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. I think one of the interesting things, and this is probably goes back to like a reference around, and the guys that we've got working with us now are not from the strength and conditioning industry. They're from health, fitness, that kind of side of things. The challenge has been to find coaches who can step into business and do, and this is not, I'm going to use a word, but I don't mean it at all in a demeaningful way, but in a more meaningful role. So like, we can get coaches, we've got great practitioners, they can stand up in front of a group of people and they can coach, which is brilliant. But we can use people more in a startup if they've also got some IT skills. Can they edit a video? Can they do a program design? Because those are the skills that make a business keep ticking. Like, when I do I fortunately don't have to do the accounts anymore because I hate that sort of stuff, but I did for a period of time. But like I said, I'll do graphic design. We're making, Jacko's doing sort of splashes and logos for social, and some of the time is we spend coaching, but a lot of the time we spend is actually doing business stuff and understanding the sales marketing side of things. And it's quite hard to find people that have got that skill set. So and I don't know that you can. There'll be some people that make good livings as coaches, being coaches, and they just stick to what they know and they get contracts and they do quite well. But I think if you're going to go and scale and build a brand, at least in my experience, you're going to have to be able to bring quite a bit more to the table, or you're going to have to buy that resource in, because it's in this modern day area, like the quality of what gets put out on social these days. You can't have a video which has got you with your head chopped off with crap sound, like with the camera bent over to the side. Like, it doesn't wash anymore. Like, you've got to pay attention to some of that other stuff, and that's an additional stress on the business of marketing. That's like a massive piece you've got to take care of. And I think those are the pillars really for me, in terms of you need someone who's, if you're going to scale a business, it's someone who can look after the accounts, or you need a good accountancy system in place, because getting behind on invoices and doing the admin sort of stuff is like, it's a pain in the arse if you don't like it. It's just got to get paid. Having someone to take care of marketing, and then you need some kind of business development, which might potentially be the same person who's the face of the business, but it's multiple hats all the time. I guess you probably got the same sort of thing, because you've got like lots of different contracts and clients, and you're doing lots of different things with people.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, I think I'm at a point now where I do have a small number of people doing certain, I suppose, more task orientated at the minute, rather than getting someone that can take care of an area. And I think that will be the next thing for me, is to get someone that can do maybe a couple of things, and maybe do like a day or two a week that can and package that up. But yeah, up until now, everything that goes out, everything has been me up until probably 6 months ago. And even now, like, I'm chasing invoices and all that fun stuff, just because it needs to be done. And if I don't do it, well, they don't pay, and we don't get paid. I don't get paid. So it's I suppose that's why I'm interested, because I'm robbing ideas of the kind of next stage for me, really. Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
interesting time.
yeah,
I'm really excited to go through that process, and I love the I suppose business side of things, and learning new skills, Photoshop, like just things you have to get au fait with.
yeah,
You have to be comfortable with, and thankfully my wife's a bit of a genius on Photoshop. She's a designer, so I can tap
yeah,
into
yeah,
her skills as well. But again, she's at work all day. She's got a job, so it's tap into her time when she's either before work or after work or weekends, which isn't the best thing to be doing.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's all interesting to really manage. I think it's all them kind of things that people maybe don't take into account. And one thing you said earlier about you having to benefit because you and your wife are both self-employed, we're not. So
Mm,
when I went self-employed, it was like, well, I can work when I want, which is I like to work in the morning. So
yeah,
I'll front end my day, and I've got free time, more free time in the afternoon. Then if need be, do a few hours in the evening. But because Charlotte works 8:30 till 4:30, I very quickly just fell into that pattern of being basic an employee, living an employee's life, but being self-employed.
mm,
She would come home, and obviously I'd maybe do a bit in the evening, but I'd be quite careful with that time. But I suppose since Christmas has been a big change for me in moving back towards what I thought it would be, and really front loading my day when I actually want to, and I'm most productive. What I think I'm most productive in the morning,
yeah,
and that's really helped. And I think that's probably helped that evening time that we do get together. That it is, we are able to keep that hopefully reasonably free, because I'm like starting at 6:30 just to get stuff
yeah,
get stuff
yeah.
done. So that's another challenge that maybe people don't think of as the challenges. So yeah,
Yeah.
I've got them things that I wrote down, the eight. I'd like to get your especially the first one. I got quite a bit of conversation from.
Mm.
Was that something so that was the 3 to 6 months money in the bank
Yeah, yeah.
that I mentioned on there? Was that something that you, when going self-employed, was that something that you took advice on, or were you going in reasonably cold
Yeah, I
on
think that's
that?
a good point. I think I
Yeah.
can't actually remember where. I think we had a bit of cash in the bank when I first
Yeah.
started. As I say, I was really fortunate with it I had an easy step in. I didn't go from an employed job. I used to work in sports development, doing coach development for a county council.
Mm.
I didn't have a point where I was like, day one, not employed anymore, run my own business, better earn some cash. Like
Yeah.
I had some guaranteed coaching time, so I knew I'd got a foot in and I had a little bit of income. So I was fortunate in that side and been able to line that up while I had a paid job. So I kind of like just went at it and sort of chipped it away. But there was one point my wife used to work for Eon, and she was just getting run down. We talked about burnout, and she should have probably had some time off, like stressed, and was just having a bit of a rough time. And we had an honest conversation. She works in marketing communications, and she does some UX, like user design, and some stuff like some
Mm.
skills which are actually really complementary now to what we're doing with the business. But she decided it was going to be the right time to leave employment. We talked about going self-employed and her setting up her own thing, and we had some money in the bank, and we went, right, do you know what? We've got enough that if you don't make anything for 3 months, we'll be all right. So it gave her that kind of grace period to be okay with just trying it and see what happens. And it went back to that point of going, until you're available, it's really difficult to get secured work. So you've almost got to, like, if you've got that buffer to step out into self-employment, knowing that it's going to be okay if you don't make any money, at least you can try it. And if it's not working after 2 or 3 months and it's not going anywhere, start putting some applications back in for some jobs. Like, I think that's the other thing. As much as those of us that enjoy self-employment will rave about how great it is, even though it's, like I said to you, like I need to put some notes down, which like I made some plans. Otherwise, it's going to end up being a therapy session.
Yeah.
Those of us that love it, like
Yeah.
it's, but it's not for everybody, and that's
Mm.
okay. Like employment's not for everybody, but I never want it to kind of people go, oh, like it's. I'm not kind of pretentious about being self-employed. It's just it is an option for people if it fits with the way that you want to live. And some people just want to go and get pensions and get paid every month and have
Mhm.
paid holiday, and they don't it's just work is just different to them, and that's cool. If that suits them. But yeah, definitely having a bit of cash in the bank, I think, just takes the pressure off, because it is going to be stressful when you first take that step out into self-employment.
The last point I had, which I think is a really something that I'm probably still getting my head around, to be honest, and that's the quality of the work, not necessarily how long it takes you. And I think that was because, I mean, I know it's different because
Yeah,
my work is not necessarily the same as, coaching an athlete for an hour or whatever it may be. But I was still very much in the mindset of, okay, well, I'm in the 9 to 5. If this doesn't take me the 8 hours I've been given, I'm kind of still supposed to be here doing something rather than,
yeah,
okay, well, what are my aims? What is actually needed? That's done in 5 hours. Okay, perfect. Well, I'm either done for the
yeah,
day because I've ticked the boxes that the X person wants me to tick, or I can get ahead and do something else. But I was like, well, I'm getting paid by this guy, so just like potter around and like all these things, like in a
yeah,
9 to 5. Does that the task that you've got to do that day take 8 hours? No, but you make it take 8 hours because you've got 8 hours to do it in. So
yeah.
that's something that I'm slowly getting out of the habit of. But was that something that you struggled with, or I suppose every situation is different given the kind of work you
Yeah.
were doing?
I think you're right in terms of, you kind of feel it across multiple things in terms of what does a day's work look like.
Mm,
Um, and we're only kind of institutionalized into thinking that a day's work is 8 hours because that's what employers have told us a day's work is.
of course.
But the reality is, like, if I go to work in an office for 8 hours and I spend 3 hours of that like chatting to co-workers, making a coffee, like just generally pissing about, skiving from work, whatever it might be, no, like, only because I've done those things probably like in the
Yeah,
past of employed
yeah,
jobs. But like, I would definitely, I would challenge any employee out there to say that they haven't filled an 8 hour day like unproductively.
mm,
But if I can get that work done in 5 hours because I'm not getting distracted by conversations and stuff in the office and gossiping or whatever, then that's a full day's work. And I think you're right. The danger, I think, within self-employment is to go, well, I've got between 8 and 4 to work, 9 and 5, whatever. So I'll just keep working because there
yes,
is always something to do. So
of
I
course.
could end the call now and I could go and do 3 hours work, and there'll still be another infinite amount of hours work that I could do.
Yeah,
And no one's going to pick that up. And that's the other thing when you mentioned about going on holiday is like it's 8 hours, but I still do work every. There's very few holidays in the last 12 years where I've not worked at least at some point to do something, because partly it's probably because I'm addicted to it to a certain level. I want to do it, like I enjoy doing it, but it's really difficult to switch off, because if you don't, or if you do switch off, you've got clients emailing you, you've got potential sales coming through, and when you're a one-man band and you haven't got anybody to handle that for you, like you might miss sales opportunities, and yeah, you could stick an out of office on, but it's one of those things that it throws in. But efficiency and optimizing time, and then like it's my wife's birthday tomorrow, and I'm gonna go like, why would you? If we'll probably both do a few hours work and we'll get a bit done. But if you're self-employed and you've got all of the difficulty and the struggle that comes with it, why not have half a day off when you can?
mm,
That's the point. That is the whole point, because it's not. If you don't take those perks, it's not worth it. No one's paying my pension for me, so I'll take my perks in another time of my maybe working 4 hours on a Friday, and I'll go out with my little boy, or we'll go out
mm.
and do something else. I
This is.
wanted to ask your views on one point.
I was
Go on,
just
finish off,
before I
mate.
do. It's my wife's birthday tomorrow as well.
24th of April.
24th of April.
Beautiful
This is
girls
getting,
born on
yeah,
24th.
exactly. Sorry, I interrupted. Then go on.
Now, I wanted to get you one that I've always struggled with as a
Mm,
self-employed person is pricing. Shocking at pricing. Like, because you start doing it because you want to help people. And
mm-hmm.
then if someone tells me a sob story about how they haven't got any cash in the budget, I'm like a sucker for that. So I've
Yeah,
got better at it because I've
yeah,
started to value my time more, and particularly since having a little boy, and going, well, if I give you that time, that's now I'm taking away time or
yes,
resource from the
yeah,
family.
yeah,
So reframing it rather than going, there would be a period of time where I would have done it for free because I
mm-hmm.
wanted to do the work, where I'm probably less likely to do that now. And also people putting a price on something, make sure that someone actually values the time that you're going to give them.
Yeah.
Are you good at pricing and sticking to fees? Is that a skill of yours? You're quite a shrewd
Um,
businessman with that, or you're
I don't,
softy like me.
yeah, I think I'm a bit of a softie to be honest, but I pluck numbers out the air as we all have at the start, and I pretty bumbled along on that, not knowing whether that was high, low, in the middle, didn't have a clue. But what I what I did do was I reached out to a business consultant that my former employer used to use. I reached out to her and I just said, look, I don't know what if this is high, low, whatever, but can I just put everything on the table and just give me your advice? So that's what we did. We met in a coffee shop at a hotel, and I just went through the numbers. And she was honest, frank and honest, and just said, you're undervaluing yourself. You're massively undervaluing yourself. From my experience, it should be this, and then you should be moving towards the bigger goal of this. But you can't make that jump because you're so far away. So you need to go here, then here, and that's what I did. And there's been a couple of scenarios where, actually one in particular, when I got caught on the hop, and I'd been discussing doing some work for someone, and I was actually doing my Christmas shopping this year, and he rung me and he's like, right, we could do this. How much would it cost? And I was like, oh, and I said the fee that I was charging, and I'd been charging for the last 2 years. And I said it, and I got off the phone, and I was like, oh, I've stitched myself again. I've stitched myself. And I thought, right, what would Gwen say? And Gwen's the lady who's been helping me.
Yeah.
And I thought I can either suck it up and resent it for as long as it lasts, or I can just say, you know what, I undercut myself. That's not what I value myself. You caught me on the hop. I made a mistake. This is actually what it should be. And I pondered that all weekend. And thankfully, it was something I knew reasonably well, because I thought that could go very wrong. Very wrong. But I explained the situation, and he was like, yeah, I understand that. That's fine. And we went with that. But that was me going, if this falls on its ass, that's okay. I've made a mistake, and I've just got to live by that. But if it goes well, I'm not going to resent this thing, because that's what I believe is my true value. So I had to kind of outsource that second view to give me the perspective, because I just didn't have a clue. I was just fumbling. I was just fumbling in the dark. I was just ignorant to what I was doing, really. So it's a difficult one though. It's really difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah. And I think we probably all intrinsically undervalue, but I think that's part of the issue with the industry, is that it potentially also undervalues the skill set of an S&C coach at times. I don't know if that's probably a fair point or not, but there's been often times where I've probably got more uncomfortable these days with kind of sitting back and going, this is the fee, and we're going to go and work to a point where you're getting yourself some room for negotiation. The tricky point comes is when you really want to do the work and you know that it's good for the business, and then you accept a far lower fee than what you would do, because I know by doing that piece of work, it's going to open doors for me. So you take the hit on that because I want to get 100%. Somewhere else. Yeah. And you've got to, you're right about the resentment. You've got to swallow that and just go and see that for what it is, rather than rocking up and doing the work and then being resentful about it because you're not getting paid as much as you would do normally. It's like you're seeding the market on you. I'm going to throw some seed down because I know that I can reap that a little bit further on. So
I think that's definitely the savvy businessman is going, okay, I'm going to take a hit here, but I know it's going to open up A, B, C, D, which I can then almost recoup my loss of my loss of cash in the first instance to then pay forward. I suppose that's where it comes. We've got 50 seconds left, haven't we? So
we did that with the UKSCA. It wasn't. It's a conference game. You don't get paid a lot, but it was such a good profile piece for us. It opened up a lot of doors. So
of course, it's been great to chat.
Pleasure, mate. It'll be really good. Some stuff in there that people can benefit from. I wrote down loads of stuff we haven't even covered.
Likewise. But enjoy your wife's birthday tomorrow.
Yeah, and you. Yeah, definitely have a good one.
Yeah, thank you very much, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks, mate.
All right, mate. Take care. See you later.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.